I'm Andrew. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
We also good to meet you, Jonah. We have my friend and podcasting partners, Kara and Ray, are with us today.
Hey, Kara and Ray.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks for having me on.
And I'll go ahead and have the podcast rolling now, if that's okay.
Sure, let's do it.
And this is for our podcast, The Fallout Feed. We are a Fallout-centric show. This many years after, the release of the game, we're still playing Fallout strong every week. And
I love it.
So we are big fans of the game, of course. And everyone out there, all of our listeners, today we have with us Jonah Lobe, an artist who used to work at Bethesda. He has worked on Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, also Oblivion Shivering Isles, and Skyrim, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Wonderful. Those are some of the biggest games. Our little group of podcasting got together because there was one guy in a basement talking about Skyrim, and then a few other people started talking about other characters they were building, and then it just sort of grew into this thing, and we sprouted off a Fallout show, and now we have all sorts of other shows too. But so we started out as a Skyrim thing, and now we're off into Fallout. So I found you because you have in your Twitter bio that you were a Fallout artist, and that really excited me. So yeah. I love seeing all the little posts and stuff you do. You have lots of really cool. You're updating art and trying out different art styles and different eyes and different things on figures all the time. It's really fun to watch.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to keep the creativity, moving on there, and hopefully by demonstrating fun, creative things, get other people inspired to do fun, creative things.
Inspiring other people. I saw you just posted the other day about someone who does Deathclaws drawings that you like. That was really fun. Oh
yeah, this guy. I think it's a woman. I'm not sure. Cullen. She's in Australia or New Zealand. I'm not sure, but her name online is Divinity, and she's kind of I think she kind of got to start kind of on DeviantArt or something, but she just does really beautiful line work, really beautiful like animals and that kind of thing. And then somewhere along the line, I'll just say they, because I'm not sure if it's a she or not, just fell in love with Deathclaws and started drawing them all the time, and it makes them so lovable and like beautiful and cute.
Yeah.
You guys really should it's Divinity, E-N Divinity, and just type that in and write Deathclaw. But if you look up Deathclaw art online, a lot of the most beautiful and kind of cutest stuff is them, and I'm a big fan, to be honest.
Yeah, that's adorable. Everyone look that up. That's awesome.
I liked the Deathclaws a lot. They're one of my favorite creatures to create, but I never expected that it would capture somebody's heart, except like brutally out of their chest.
I listened to an interview that you did with the Fallout Off the Record folks. They're actually friends of ours. We do some projects with Shalene and Rick sometimes. So you spoke about designing the Deathclaw there. I was kind of curious. When you, for Fallout 3, were working on Super Mutants, and you were also working on Deathclaws, how much of the previous Fallout games, did you have to go back and play just as sort of inspiration to get a feel for design work? Did you go back and play like Fallout and Fallout 2 and Fallout Tactics and stuff? Did those characters in the past, or when the license was handed to Bethesda, do you guys just sort of like hit the ground running with your own ideas? How does that work?
That's a good question. It's obviously a dance you have to play. So I've never played Fallout Tactics, but I distinctly remember playing a lot of Fallout when I was much younger, because I want to say this is maybe middle school or something, but I was doing, or maybe it was high school. Maybe it was high school. I can't remember, but I was sleeping over at a friend's house, and they just gotten Fallout 2, and I could not believe my little eyes, what I was seeing, what I was playing. So that's a huge imprint on me. So and then when you take it an IP like Fallout, so even though I hadn't heard about it for years when I joined Bethesda, the art test they originally gave me to see if I can get into Bethesda, even though I knew they were working on Oblivion, looked very Raider futuristic thing, and I knew it just from looking at it. I thought to myself, this is Fallout. I don't know what's going on here, but this is Fallout. So when I ended up on the project, there's definitely it's a beautiful legacy to try to uphold. It's a really exciting one, and it's very original. So you certainly have to take, everyone on the team, I think, took a lot of time to, if not play the game, at least research the game, and to really read the material and really kind of brush up. And actually, a lot of that can also come down to not so much studying the game itself, is studying all the sources upon which that game was drawn, to form. So, I didn't say that right, but I hope you understand what I mean. So in the case of Fallout, the 1950s, iconic American dream versus, the much harsher realities of nuclear war and devastation, the kind of ultra patriotic jingoism, where we're kind of constantly threatening about the Red Menace, mixed with the Jetsons, Family Home. It's really a beautiful, and then you have, movies like Dr. Strangelove. You have, there's so many resources to draw from. So it really, I think sometimes to create a more accurate, or not even accurate, but more true sequel to something or answer to something, you really want to study the subject matter that thing was based on. Not even, I think, and I think a lot of people might disagree with me, but not even, I think, the actual game itself. Although obviously one should always try to play the game, and the game of which, by the way, I was a huge fan, and a lot of the lead designers were huge fans of. So this is not to imply that people didn't do it, but I think that because as with any piece of art or any project, there's a lot of imperfections in it, and people who are true fanboys and girls would like to claim that the original games of any of their favorite franchises were in essence perfect, right? But of course there's always that patina of time, and it's so rose colored, and you're up against the fact that especially games, they're not polished works of art. They're labors of love that are dripping with imperfection, but that can really make a lasting difference as kind of an artistic statement and an experience. So in answer to your original question, definitely studied a lot from the originals when I made replayed some of it, but not much. Mostly I just looked at all the old art and read a lot of the dialogue as well, because I wanted to get a feel of these things. And I did not make I made the super mutant brutes in Fallout 3, which were in a DLC, but otherwise I just made all the armors for the super mutants in Fallout 3. That was a different artist. And then when Fallout 4 came around and I did it, I did a two-step where one, I was referencing a lot of the original super mutants from 1 and 2 and looking at a lot of their portraits, looking at their build, etc. And I was instructed to do that, not that I needed instruction per se, but by Todd and Emil, the lead designers, because there was a very concerted effort. There was a statement said at the beginning of Fallout 4 to the team, within the team, and that was essentially, we are not making the sequel to Fallout 3. This is not Bethesda's take on a Bethesda game. We are in every way going to go back and see if we can touch on all the original things that made the original Fallout. So I was looking at both the original super mutants, and I was guided in very large part by the concept artwork of Adam Adamowicz, who was a concept artist there. He did all the concept art for Fallout 3, literally every single piece of concept art that was made for that game, and every piece of visual brilliance and humor he had a hand on. And then for Fallout 4, he did kind of a different take on the super mutants, one that I thought really felt true to the original, the originals, even though they weren't kind of done thusly, but that also felt original. And that was, he was making these very long-bodied kind of, not roided out Hulk monsters, not constantly bulging with muscle or whatever, but more melting like taffy, growing and expanding as if their muscles had turned into large slabs of tofu. And and that to me really blended this idea of like, yes, the FEV virus can make one into a super soldier, but it really ruins you as you're no longer human, and you're really degraded in some really essential ways. So looking at a lot of the mindset, the personality types that you would see in the original Fallout, mixed with this somewhat new aesthetic, that was the very long answer for your question for how did we walk that line. But it was they were so much fun to do. I love Super Mutants.
No, but it's a wonderful peek behind, some of the touchstones and inspirations, because there are a lot of, touch points in Fallout 4 that you can see and that thread back to other games and so on and so forth, which I think made the game quite enjoyable for a lot of people this time around. Were there any designs that kind of gave you guys problems? Like, was there one in particular that you kind of hemmed and hawed over and tossed around longer than you would have liked?
Oh, no, that's an interesting question. Interesting. I guess that goes for both Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, yes?
Yes.
Huh. Well, I was never a fan of the Yao Guai, but that came down to my own abilities. That was my least favorite creation from Fallout 3. But with regard to design, I think some designs got tossed around much longer than others. I mean, Super Mutants being such a staple, we're always, we always took extra long to try to get them right. And they had a very unique kind of translucent skinned look in Fallout 3, and in Fallout 4, my version, there was kind of taffy skin variety. So often the ones that are there the longest take the longest to kind of figure out. So often, these come down to, I know for Fallout, here's a good answer. For Fallout 4, the Vault Dweller suit, I did not make that. My friend Dennis, who worked right next to me, made that. He's also the man responsible for a lot of the robots in the game. But he was charged with designing the Vault, the Survivor, the Lone Survivor suit. And you would think that this suit never changes, but it's just like Thor's outfit or Iron Man's suit. It is not the same ever from one movie to the next. It's always been redesigned with all the classic, little touches, but all these little things moved and squished around and kind of massaged in different directions. And I know that was a really long and frustrating process for him, where it was at once a huge honor to work on that, and on the other hand, I think it just. I think he probably just absolutely hates the Vault Dweller suit at that point. And then,
I can see that. I just find the things that are most challenging in any project, the one that kind of sticks with me the most, and I guess something to learn from as well. So I was just very curious about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked your answer because I was curious about the Yao Guais and so on and so forth. So you actually answered a couple of my questions there.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
So Jonah, did the Obsidian game have any impact on the changes between Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 as far as the art design?
Sure. As far as art design, no. No, I wouldn't say so. With regards to game design, I would say yes. I think there can be a lot of, debate about, the level of design intricacy from or kind of choice that was handled, from the Bethesda design team versus the Obsidian design team. I think a lot of, to be honest, I think there's a lot of people out there who, especially people who love Fallout, who just really love New Vegas and who love the works of Obsidian, which are prodigious and like very, quite impressive, and I think have left their mark. With regards to art, not so much. So I I have a little bit. You're going to see the ego in me come out here. I'm a little hesitant to embrace the new Vegas games only insofar as they take, they have a small team, right? And they didn't have that much time. They were expected to create a lot of material. So a lot of the areas look kind of desolate, and a lot of the art from our games is reused and repurposed and changed around. Now I'm a huge fan of modding. I think it's like, and modders in general are like a godsend to Bethesda as a game company in particular. But to see a lot of my creations used again, like and kind of pulled and back and forth and changed around, like the death claws, for instance. Seeing, I loved seeing different varieties of death claws, but the artist in me, the perfectionist in me, every time I saw one would cringe to be like, no, I would have done it differently, and what have you. So from an artistic perspective, I always felt a little weird. It's a little weird when you put a lot of effort and time and love into something, and then it gets used by other people in ways maybe you didn't expect or intend or would have done differently. And that and that counts the same from one company to another or from within a company. Anytime somebody's handling your babies, you kind of tense up.
Yeah, so that kind of leads me into my question about modding, because modding is a huge part of the community at this point, and really why we can spend so many years later enjoying this game in many different and not original ways.
Absolutely.
So how does you embrace the modding community, and have you had any involvement with them?
Oh yeah, I mean, what have I had involvement with them? Not especially. No, I mean, I think when you work on at a company full time, and you kind of pour your lifeblood into this project, it's very, especially at the end of the project, it's really hard to jump back in with both feet with the same level of enthusiasm as you did before. Usually, when you're finished with the project, you want to rinse your hand of it and just walk away. And for a couple of years, and then until you have the this is why, for instance, we didn't go from Fallout 3 directly to Fallout 4. People are fatigued, but then by the time Skyrim was over, everyone was like, hell yeah, bring on Fallout. So I've never been able to dive into the mod community in that respect. With that said, I don't like to replay Bethesda games without installing a whole bunch of mods. I mean, it's this fun remix where here's the game that you worked on and that you labored on for so many years, and yet here the community has given back and amplified it in so many ways. And that's why I do want to see more monsters and more monster variants or different character models or new quests with kind of new swords to find. And I think that the wonderful thing about Bethesda games in particular is that it's all about the player's journey and you carving your own path through this world. The main quest never really matters that much with when placed against the idea that, oh, I just started the game and now I get 360 degrees of direction to choose from, and I can just start walking and I have my adventure. So having that world populated by a whole host of new and exciting quests and monsters and graphics and etc. I mean, there's absolutely everything to be gained from that. So, and I think also, so with regards to the the replay experience, modding is essential. I also think modding is a really great playground for people to come up with new ideas to kind of to create. And I think any venue that empowers people to create and add, and add a touch of themselves into our games is just is just brilliant, and always it's such a wonderful thing. I mean, anybody who knows me or who has watched my Twitch stream, or when I was twitching for Adobe, knows that I'm all about art and creativity and just taking the time to create something for yourself. And so I think that's in this respect, the modding community is like an artistic support group. I mean, not that it's full of the people in the world, but it's like a great place to come together and share. So yeah, that's my answer.
Okay.
Will stream on Twitch occasionally just for yourself, or only when you're promoting products?
I myself from time to time as much as I'd like. I did it for about 2 years there. I was doing weekdays, and it was a really wonderful experience. And actually, it paid back, even though streaming itself is basically moneyless endeavor, even for partnered streamers like myself. But it pays back in other ways in that it really helps you with your visibility. And I only say that just because that kind of visibility is hard to. I would love to do it more, but it's also very tiring. It's kind of taxing, at least to do the way I would like to do, to really engage people, to answer their questions. If they have artistic feedback they want me to give that, to explain what I'm doing, to entertain as I go. And it's kind of just a lot of energy. And at this point also I'm 35 and I need to be spending my time on projects that can make me money. And life she is demanding.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you do stream, you have to be on. So not only are you working on a project, but you're engaging and you're doing probably 5 different things at once. So that's why I was curious about that.
Totally.
But at the same time, you're right, it's really rewarding and it does help with visibility.
Absolutely. I've gotten multiple kind of really, really fantastic gigs. I mean, I guess the first one was Adobe found me through my streaming website, and I started streaming for them twice a week, and that has paid off in ways I actually never expected. In that I've kind of now been included in other projects that I would never have even heard of, or they wouldn't have heard of me. That worked out well. Actually, I found my book agent through Twitch, which was a huge surprise. And I also am doing a project now. I'm almost finished. Actually, I mean, I essentially am finished. I just have a video editor working on the last little bits. But there's a website called Pluralsight, and it's a video training, training tutorials for all number of things. Audio design, video design, web design, programming, game design. And I'm doing a character creation for movies and video games tutorial that is very art centric, and it's coming out in I think just a couple months. I mean, it's about like 4 hours long. It's a long tutorial. I'm creating a creature for it and all that. So anyway, yeah, I've really been surprised by how much actually doing that kind of gave back to me. But so part of me thinks like, man, I really who knows what else will come if I hop back on. But thinking about hopping back on sometimes just makes me tired just thinking about it. Yeah.
Jonah, you mentioned you are freelancing now. Would you please like to tell us what current projects you're working on?
I would love to.
If you're allowed to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the hitch. I would love to, but actually the main one that I'm involved with, I'm not allowed to speak about.
I definitely wanted to give you the opportunity to mention the Alvani. Is that how it's pronounced?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I get asked a lot why I left Bethesda, because I think everyone just hears, oh, you worked at Bethesda, why would you ever leave? Part of that answer is because I've been there for 7 years. It's also in Maryland, and it's only about 25 minutes from where I grew up in Maryland. So part of me also was like, well, I needed to kind of get out of my area. I was the luckiest individual ever that I lived near there, because I think I probably would not have landed the job if I hadn't been so conveniently close. But at a certain point, I needed to get out. My wife was in New York, and I already had been in New York for 2 years at that point in law school, and I really wanted to move up to her. And now we have a place up here. But besides her, she's a huge reason for leaving, obviously. But besides her, the other reason was that I wanted to write a book. This is a fantasy novel, And essentially, this has been a project of mine for easily a decade. And it comes down to, I have a love of creative writing, and I did a lot of creative writing when I was younger. And I've just always thought that, writing books would be something I would also love to do. And I've been very passionate about good writing and about, fantasy in general. And so I started writing this story, 10, 11 years ago, I think even more, maybe 12 years ago. And I wrote it as a screenplay. I wanted to make a fantasy movie screenplay. And I wrote a draft of it over the course of a year. And then I wrote another draft of it and then another. And then 5 years had gone by and I'd written 5 drafts of it and, collapsing characters, moving things around and getting things kind of structurally sound. And then kind of halfway through the 5th draft, I realized that this would never get made because it's all Hollywood was doing was remakes. All they wanted was franchises.
Yeah.
And nobody was investing in properties that nobody had heard of before. And this series, I'm a lover of fantasy. I'm a creature creator. I have invested my life very heavily in fantasy. And so I really feel like it's my duty as a creator to try to create the most original, best work that I possibly can. And consequently, the story that I was writing was very fantastical. In many ways, it's very grounded in kind of the realities of politics and war. But it's also, it takes place in a world where no one is actually human. There's no humans. Everyone's different species. I was very inspired, for instance, by the Dark Crystal, but also the Cantina scene in Star Wars, by the old Robin Hood, where all these characters are anthropomorphized. I'm a huge fan of this, right? And I feel like this is that kind of world really lends itself to true creativity in a way that the kind of Tolkien-esque elves and dwarves and orcs kind of aesthetic has kind of drowned out a lot of mainstream fantasy culture. So this is a story that was very fantastical, that had basically no humans, that would require, if it was made into a film, a very big budget. And essentially, when I did the math in my head, I realized that this would never get made. It might sell, but it would never get made. And then and it would just fade away, unless I could write a book or a book series. And this whole story had already been structured perfectly. I knew on a per chapter basis, you could tie my hands behind my back and blindfold me, and I could tell you all the chapters that happen, what happens in them in reverse, very, very quickly. I knew it back and forward. And I was really missing out on writing novels, on writing description, on prose, because I think that there's a magic in language. And I don't want to tell a story just to tell you this happened and this happened and this happened. I want to create an experience, a mood, and a world that you can kind of immerse yourself into. And so I wanted to write a book. And writing screenplay is simply, the screenplay format, it's skeletal. It's, so-and-so entered and picks up a cup, and then says this line of dialogue, and then they exit. That's what a screenplay looks like on paper. And I really wanted to indulge in the English language and play with mood and that kind of thing. So I began working, as soon as I moved up here to New York, on converting the script into a book, and just basically just started chapter 1, started writing, and now here I am. I guess it's been 5 years. The book is done, although done is, always a question mark. But I have a book agent. I got her about a year ago. She's wonderful. I love her. Her name is Gabby. She's located here in New York at the Fiore and Company. She's wonderful. She really, really believes in the Elvani. And again, the name can go in a bunch of different directions at this point. And she helped me break this book down into 2 books because it was a very long novel. But she did not want to cut any of the, she saw that I had put in all the due diligence with regards to making sure that as large as it was, there was no fluff. But she also was smart enough to know that in this day and age, people are much more likely to buy 2 300-page books than they are 1 600-page book. And it was always my intention. The length of it never surprised me. I always knew this was going to be epic. But I think she was really on the money about that. So yeah, so right now we're pitching to the adult markets and to the young adult markets. The wait time is very long. The publishing last year was apparently in every publishing house a catastrophe. So things are moving a little slower, and I'm not getting this out the gate as quickly as I'd like. But I am. If there's any one thing I could impress upon your viewers is that this, more than Skyrim, more than Fallout, more than anything I've done, this is my baby, and I cannot wait to share it with you guys. And I'll be happy to tell you more about the plot and all that if you want that too. But I guess I just went on for a while.
I can't wait to consume it when it finally comes out. That'll be great.
Yeah, that's my thought. You said that you mentioned things like the Dark Crystal, the anthropomorphized Robin Hood. That brings me to a question I had, if we can take a side trip for a minute. For me, I love fantastical creatures. Like, I remember watching The Shadow of the Colossus, watching friends play. All of those amazing creatures, as well detailed as they could be for the time. And then the remake came out and my breath was taken away. And I was wondering, is there a particular project or projects where there are certain fantastical creatures that you really admire the creation and how they were put together? That's a pretty broad question, so I understand if it's difficult to answer.
No, listen, you ask the monster maker, his favorite monsters. I can do that. Trust me, I've committed thoughts to this question. Yeah, well, I think that one thing that we should just note really quickly is that Shadow of the Colossus is a special game. And the reason it's special is because it gives you the feels. And it's the creatures themselves that give you the feels. The main characters struggle is one thing, but what really binds you to the world is these majestic beasts that you are dispatching, and once you kill them, it's understood that there will never be their like in this world again. So when it comes to my favorite characters and monsters, I think that designs can really, really make a beast. But I think often the most memorable ones are the ones that leave a lasting impression on us emotionally. So the Pale Man from Pan's Labyrinth, the skeletal ogre-esque character who has eyes in his hands. I mean, he is, it doesn't matter that he's physically frail looking. And it doesn't matter that maybe if you were like a big buff dude, maybe you could punch him out, because he makes you feel nothing but terror. He's absolutely terrifying. And so that is it. And with regards to originality of design, I think in this day and age, we see a lot of redundancy in creature design. This creature roars, it has big teeth, it acts all aggressive. That's, what else can a thing make you feel, or what else can a thing do to really leave an impression? And with regards to the Pale Man, it's not strong looking, it's not fast, it doesn't have big teeth. In fact, its teeth are worn to almost nothing. It's a very thin man, looks like he's old, looks like he once had a lot of fat and now it's all gone. But he's a nightmare. He's a walking nightmare. So that's one example of a great character design. But gosh, a lot of Guillermo del Toro's creatures. The woman from Mama, the Pacific Rim monsters. There's a great example of a great monster design. And that goes in the opposite direction. Those creatures make you feel emotions, but not, but much more entertaining much more like, wow, it's like watching a pro wrestling match. Behold the power of these things. And that's what they're geared for. And but with that regard, in regards to that kind of thing, it works, and they totally work. So yeah, anything Guillermo del Toro does, basically. I'm trying to think of what else has stood out. And I guess when you think of classic stuff, I mean, the Jim Henson work in Dark Crystal is unparalleled. Let me think. The Xenomorph, obviously. I love the designs of the new movies. The new Alien movies, I think are fairly poor with regards to story, and almost surprisingly so. That's just my opinion. But with regards to visuals, and with regards to paying homage, kind of, to the artist H.R. Geiger, who created the Xenomorph, in creating these different plays off this design, I think it works really well. It works really beautifully. So, and it's also affecting. It also makes you, the Xenomorph as a creature, it's not just designed to look scary. It plays off psychosexual tropes. I mean, with every inch of its body, it was designed to do that. As was the original Alien movie. So it's got it can really mess with you on different levels, and it does so very effectively. So I guess I could just go on, but I'll stop there.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
No, my pleasure.
Jonah, I didn't want to eat up your whole afternoon or anything, but I.
Andrew, you're echoing.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe me too. There you go.
Okay. Jonah, I'm sorry, I didn't want to eat up your entire afternoon here, but I kind of had a sort of fun 3-part question that I wanted to close with.
Sure, no problem. I can go a little longer if you want. I'm not in such a hurry. It's Sunday.
Okay. But here, I'll toss this out anyway, and maybe it'll spark off some other conversation. If you had to take a cross-country flight from New York to Los Angeles on an airplane with 3 seats, you're sitting in the middle between 2 of your creations, which, and on that flight, which one would be like the most exciting, which one would be the most dangerous, and which would be the most intellectually stimulating? Those are the 3 types of flights you have to take between 2 of your creations.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow.
So like the exciting flight between 2 of your monsters or it doesn't necessarily have to be monsters. It could be anything that you've worked on.
Sure. So which one's the most exciting? Which one's the most intellectually stimulating? And which one's the most dangerous?
Yeah.
Let me think here. I think the least intellectually stimulating would be the Draugr. I think they just sit there and stare ahead.
Draugr, great.
Just slowly rotting. I think it would be nice to sit next to a giant, because I think, I modeled the giant after his face is basically kind of, it looks very similar to my father's face.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, it's like a blend between my father and my uncle. I mean, if you want to know what the giants are based on, that's it.
That's cool.
And I also worked very hard on his hands to make them look wrinkled and old and strong. And again, kind of like how you would look at your parents' hands when you're little and you have little hands and all that. So I think sitting next to my giant would make me feel, even though I think he'd be very stinky and I think he'd have like that like cheese sweat from eating all that mammoth cheese. I think I would once you clogged up your nose, you could kind of like maybe cuddle up next to him. So that would be nice. I think the most intellectually stimulating would probably be the Dragon Priest.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, just because I think he'd definitely be a bit of an a-hole. I think he'd kind of demand taking the armrest, and like just kind of, not even because he wants it, but just because he has a lot of pride. But I'm good with stuffy people like that. And I think over the course of an intercontinental flight, I could get him to open up a lot about like what being a Dragon Priest was like, and maybe if there was human sacrifices involved. And I think that once he got going, I think this dude would have a lot to say. I think he'd definitely be like kind of really arrogant, and like probably like he would not let you get a word in edgewise, because he'd want to expound on what Alduin did then and what the exciting thing that Parthenax said and all that. But I think he'd really get going, and I think he'd learn a lot. And so for those interested in history, I think that would be fun. And yeah. And then so then the most dangerous creation, I mean, it would probably have to come from the Fallout universe. Originally, I was thinking the Death Claw, but I think you know what? I got to tell you, I think the Death Claw and me would be cool. I think we wouldn't have any problems because we're just close like that. But maybe the Mirelurk King, or man, oh, you know what? Probably the troll from Skyrim, or the feral ghoul from Fallout 3.
Oh,
the feral ghoul from Fallout 3 he's really twitchy, and I think anything could set him off. You know.
Hey, comic book nerds always have the Hulk versus Thor argument. What is your dragon versus Deathclaw?
Whew, that's hard, man. You know, the problem here is that dragons are, you know, they kind of break the mold a little bit, because I think dragons are kind of the ultimate creature in human history. You know, they're the one creature that everywhere you go in the world, everyone seems to have some myth of dragons, right? Whether it's the Chinese or the Aztec with the feathered serpent, or the Western mythology idea of a dragon. Dragons are everywhere. So in the game of, you know, rock, paper, scissors, dragon, it's dragon every time. With that said, I think maybe a regular Deathclaw could take a normal dragon and maybe just not be able to take Alduin. I think Alduin's made kind of metal, and so I think that there's not a lot of little Deathclaw could do.
Excellent answer. Thank you, sir.
I had test worlds in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 and Skyrim that were, you know, developer-sided little worlds that I could warp to. I could open the console, open up Skyrim, or open up Fallout 3, or open up Fallout 4, open the console and warp to Jonah Zoo, which was the name of the world. And it was basically just an indoor location and an outdoor location with a little bit of set design, and it just had all my creatures in it walking around. And some of them were normally neutral, and so they wouldn't attack anybody. But some of them, the moment I warped in, they would just turn on each other and start, you know, you had a giant ant queen wailing on a feral ghoul, you know, being wailed on by, you know, a Yaogwai, you know, and it was a lot of fun every time. It never got old.
That's incredible.
So when you ask me who would win, I'm like, well, I've played that game. I've cage matched these creatures.
Oh, that's great. Fun stuff. Kara, did you have anything else?
No, I asked all of my questions.
I do have a technical question. There was a 3D modeler, and I don't understand any of these questions, Jonah, but he was curious if you were given a base mesh to work off of for each creature character. Were you given a target poly count? How many texture sets did you use? Were you given a set number? Which software did you use to create assets? And whose concepts were used for creatures? And did you get any say in those design aspects? Sorry, that's a lot to throw at you.
That's a lot of questions. Yeah, I'll give a quick answer to that. No essential poly count, although most poly counts were around 10,000. No, I was not given a base mesh. Everything I made from scratch, and still do to this day. A lot of my concepts were based on either Ray Lederer's concept artwork, or they were based on Adam Adamowicz, who again was the Fallout concept artist for all of 3 and a lot of 4. I wrote an article, by the way, about Adam Adamowicz. He passed away a couple years ago. If you just Google Jonah Lobe, Adam Adamowicz, or Jonah Lobe creativity, it'll come up right away. But you guys should read that. He was a special guy, and if people here are fans of Fallout, then you really would be remiss to miss reading about him, because he's so much of the Fallout that we know and love is because of this guy. And then with regards to taking freedoms, I took a lot of freedoms. So a lot of designs were they were kind of happened on my end, right? So some I just invented out of nowhere, but many I had maybe some sketches that the art director maybe liked but didn't know which direction to take them, and I just said, don't worry about it, give me the concepts and I'll get to work. So something like the death claw for Fallout 4, I actually preempted anyone's concept art, and just at that point I knew that I only was going to be working there for a few more months, and they hadn't even officially confirmed the death claws would be a part of Fallout 4, but I knew that I would never be able to live with myself if I let somebody else make the death claws.
Yeah.
So I did it. I started working on it at home, and only when it was 70% done did I take it into work and show Todd Howard. And it was great because they had this whole outline for the demo, how the demo for Fallout 4 would go. And after he saw that, 2 days later, he came by and he said, by the way, we just changed the entire demo so that at the very end, a death claw climbs its way out of the sewer and you have to fight it. So for anyone who watched the trailer and all that, or the teaser, and played that part of the quest where you get the power armor, and then have to face the death claw in the streets, that really came about because I just that came about for many different reasons, but the death claw at the end there is because I just up and created one. So, but at that point I had enough to work with from the Fallout 3 death claws, from the original death claws. And then at that point I basically decided, you know what, I'm ending my tenure at Bethesda Softworks. I'm going to take liberties and I'm going to make the best death claw that I know how. And so that was one where I kind of went off on my own altogether. Ayla the Huntress's outfit from Skyrim, I didn't really have any concept art for. I was just told, imagine Red Sonja, like that kind of outfit. But this was for the female jogger. And so, imagine Red Sonja, but just dead. And so I designed that, and then it kind of got retrofitted to be on Ayla the Huntress. So I get a lot of flexibility there. Let me think. What were the other questions he was asking?
The technical issues were just about software or assets.
Oh yes, and I sculpt in ZBrush, and I used to texture in Photoshop. Now I texture in Substance Painter, and I use 3D Studio Max, and I think that's what they use there as well. So yeah.
Do you have advice for like kids wanting to get into video game industry? Actually, one of the reasons that you are on the show today was because I retweeted a thread that you had sort of an opinion piece about the video game industry in general. Do you have any advice for kids who want to get into the industry, a pro or against, or and any advice to heed?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so I'm gonna say a couple of things, and they might sound a bit unpopular to some, and for that I apologize, but I won't back down. One of those things would be is play fewer video games and spend more time on your craft. That's not easy to say, but I think that a lot of people who want to be in the game industry do that because they love games. I mean, actually, that's probably 100% of them. But I think a lot of those people are also, like me, a little addicted to games. And we tend to fool ourselves into thinking that if I'm doing this, it's really research of some kind. And sometimes it is. Often it's not. What I think can make people stand out in the crowd and stand out in the industry is bringing new ideas to the table. New ideas, not recycled ideas. So I think what that entails, or should entail, and what I would recommend is, I think people who aspire to be part of the game industry, they're aspiring to be creators. And to be creators, you have to consume from many different sources, not just, and I don't mean many different games, I mean from the real world, from history, from literature, and basically just try to get the best education you can that way. I mean, seek out education. I don't mean go to a nice school. I mean, find things to learn about and be passionate about and learn about them, because these things all pay back when you in the process of creation. So I think also the other prong is, I think I would spend a lot of time working on creating things. That doesn't mean you need to create a video game, but simply engaging in the act of creating a project for yourself is challenging, and you learn an enormous amount about yourself, about your capabilities. And I think what a lot of industry, what a lot of the industry is looking for when it comes to fresh young talent, you know, some industries like the EAs of the world or the bigger warehouses, they might be looking for a plug and play individual, somebody who can just immediately start doing models and that kind of thing. But if you want to be an original content creator and kind of more of an author or auteur, however you want to say that, in the industry, you're going to want to prove to people and to yourself that you can set a goal and go for it and create it from start to finish, and you know, to create something cool. So less time on just the video games and more time on engaging the real world. You know, when I would mention at the very beginning of this podcast, the Fallout universe, in all its the many things upon which it draws. If you're not versed in those things, if you don't know anything about the 1950s or about the military-industrial complex, or about, you know, suburban lifestyle, you know, of 1950s America, you know, you're not going to get it, and you're not going to, you know, you're going to what you will create will be a Xerox of the original content of the game. It won't be you drinking from the original, you know, sources and kind of creating something new. It'll be a recycling. And so this is another reason why I discourage too much video game play. Not because it rots your mind or any of that stuff. It's because you're drinking an elixir that's already been created for you from a potent set of original sources. And if you're trying to then reproduce that, you know, and all you've taken in is that source or those sources, what you create will never be better than those things. You know, it can always at best be equal to them, because you're trying to imitate something that's already been done from start to finish. I think that the key to creativity is to creating things, and again I say this because the game industry is all about that. I think is in learning and expanding your mind in directions that you would never normally go, because creativity is really about putting disparate ideas together. How do you make an impression? So yeah, I think that's my answer.
I think that's pretty sound advice.
Thank you.
Incredible.
I didn't.
I had a question from an Elder Scrolls angle here for you, Jonah.
All right, bring it.
We have a project that we do with our little podcasting network called the Roundtable, where people roll random. We have a computer program set up where all the different attributes for Fallout and Skyrim are plugged into the spreadsheet, and you can generate random characters. And then we have these random characters generated, and then we play the same quests together and get on the podcast and talk about how we attack the different problems because of those different random attributes and everything.
Fascinating.
One of the roundtables that they're about to start is the Oblivion roundtable, and they're going through Shivering Isles. This was your first Bethesda project, correct?
That's the first one.
They asked, are there any Easter eggs, anything they need to look out for, any winks or nods they need to look out for in Shivering Isles?
Oh, man. Any Easter eggs in Shivering Isles? So I wasn't, you know, because it was my first task, I didn't feel totally unencumbered and ready to kind of leave my personal Jonah Lobe print on everything. I was much more concerned with trying to get things right and do things right. So I didn't leave any Easter eggs, I don't think, in that one, although I can tell you a little bit about what doing that was like. I can tell you that there's an Easter egg that I left in Skyrim.
Yes, please.
The dragon bone armor that I made has an armband. Has metal armbands and with the kind of inset with this kind of circular white bone, and there's dragon language around that. And shall I tell you what it is, or should you just Google it? I'll just tell you because it's just
please
Google away. I just wrote my name. It says, I think it says Jonah Lobe in dragon language around the biceps.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's one I left. But with regards to Shivering Isles, I also didn't know the team well enough to be aware of Easter eggs as they went in. I can tell you that one of my first creatures that I ever made for the Elder Scrolls was the Scalon from Shivering Isles, and the first time, my first big memorable moment where I felt I was being recognized at Bethesda was during a team meeting, and they showcased in a very quick AVI file the Scalon jumping forward with a big jump forward attack. And up until then, nobody had ever seen. We hadn't done that yet at Bethesda. No creature ever actually lunged at you with a big attack. This is the pre-Deathclaw, pounce. And I remember everyone really, really got excited, and I felt this flush of victory, watching it, because I was like, wow, I'm at Bethesda, and all these other people seem really excited by the thing I just made, and and it was a cool thing, and then it was cool to see that animation and that capability get created there and then used more and more with more creatures later on. That was fun. I made the Shivering Isles gate. The three-headed gate, and then when Skyrim came along and we didn't have any concept art for the Wabbajack, I decided I would go ahead and echo the Shivering Isles motif with the 3 faces around the outside. I made the Dark Seducer and Golden Saints armors. I made one of the worst things I ever made was this. It was called the Skinned Hound or something from Shivering Isles. And it was basically like a dog that had all its fur peeled off. It did not look good. It was bad. It was bad. Yeah, so those are some things I made for that. Yeah,
that's
not terribly proud of myself, but that was it was my fledgling efforts.
That brings up a great question. One of the things that you're disappointed made in the Skinned Hound. What's the most thing that you were most proud of that didn't make it into a game?
I didn't usually make something all the way if I knew it wasn't going to get in.
Get used, yeah.
But I had a dream for Fallout 4 that I really wanted to pursue, and I knew that the chances of getting it done would not happen. But just in case, this was during the frenzy, the last couple of months before I knew I was leaving Bethesda. I wanted to, these were my last chances to get things in, and I knew I had, I didn't leave there with enemies. I made sure that everyone still loved me, because I wanted to leave the back door open. If things went south, I could flee back to Bethesda, and people would let me in. So I wanted to also use this opportunity to create things that otherwise wouldn't get put in. And so I modeled a creature based on a sculpture, and I want to make sure I get the name of the sculpture right. So let me just Google this right now. I think it's called the Walking Man or something, or the Thin Man. I should know this. Walking Man sculpture. This is important because Giacometti's Walking Man. So if you Google that, you'll see a really tall, really thin character. Now, it left such an impression on me that I wanted to create a creature like this, and I wanted to create a creature that was not just big, but that it was enormous. And I wanted to create a creature a lot like it would be the Shadow of the Colossus answer for Fallout. That was my idea. And so it's this giant 50-foot tall man that was essentially could not be killed by the player except through quests. But it wasn't just a man. He was a feral ghoul, a glowing one. And he was accelerating. His growth was accelerating and constant. And because he was a glowing one, he was constantly regenerating. So I had created, and I'll try to post images of it on Twitter soon. So for those who follow me on Twitter, I'll send it out soon. But I wanted to create this essential 50-foot tall, extremely thin character that strode slowly across the horizon and was very dangerous to be around, highly radioactive, and was followed at all times by roving herds of feral ghouls who ran around his feet. And essentially, he would be this walking embodiment of pain and misery. And I imagine that he was some, in going with the classic happy Fallout universe, right? And I wanted to create this basic excited about it. And I think somebody even concepted some art of Liberty Prime attacking this thing. But
that's awesome.
But to say that it came close to getting in the game, I think would be disingenuous. I don't think it actually ever had a chance.
Oh, the concept art of just Liberty Prime fighting a giant, walking man ghoul would be incredible.
Right? It sounds very cinematic, but you have to make certain, Bethesda games are very particular in that they have to be sandbox. And when you throw a giant toddler into the middle of a sandbox, it's going to wreck a bunch of crap. So I think you just had to leave that one out. So, but I have the art sitting around here. I'm very proud of it. It's really horrifying. But I'll put it out at some point. So if anyone follows me on Twitter or Instagram, I'll try to get that soon. So
yeah, please. That sounds absolutely wonderfully horrifying to just happen upon. No spoilers in the game, fresh in the game, just because that's how it was when I actually went to face the Deathclaw for the very first time in Concord. It was my first time playing a Fallout game, and I had no idea what a Deathclaw was. And it scared the crap out of me, and I loved it. I loved every second of it.
That's great. Yeah. Well, you want to create as a creature designer, you want to create characters that people will connect with, for better or worse. So that you played against the Deathclaw, and after that, you're like, well, I'll never forget a Deathclaw again. And and I think that's how a lot of people felt playing Fallout 3. You walking along through the wilderness, and then you see a Deathclaw on the horizon, and by then it's already too late. It's already spotted you, and at that point, even though it's 300 meters away, it's probably too late for you. That's a fun thing. Just to create that connection.
Yeah, that's pretty much my favorite part about the fantastical creatures. That feeling, the first time feeling of encountering them.
Thank you. That makes me very, very happy. Yeah, and if you can make the creatures give different feelings, then that's excellent. So just I wanted, for instance, when you see the Mirelurks in Fallout 4, I wanted them to look stupid. Legitimately not smart and yet scary, right? When they see you, they don't feel anger, they don't be furious, they don't try to intimidate you. You're just something for them to chew on. And they'll scuttle at you very mindlessly, that kind of thing. As opposed to, for instance, the Fallout 3 ghouls, where my whole intention was for you to feel horror and revulsion because they're so close to being human, and yet they're not. They're ruined. And I wanted you to feel most of all pity and kind of like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. In fact, for anybody who's a fan of Fallout 3 and you've snuck up on a ghoul unawares, you might notice that sometimes they give a sudden spasm. Their whole body shakes very violently. And that was an idea that I gave the animator, because I as I was creating them, basically they didn't have eyelids. They're just these white eyes in their face. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be something? What a story it would be if it wasn't the mutations that made feral ghouls into man-eating monsters. What if it was the fact that, a century ago, their eyelids fell off and they haven't slept at all, and humans need sleep to stay sane? What if they literally, because they couldn't support their own eyelids, they just went crazy after a while? And so I kind of started talking to the animator and saying, hey, what if there was other kind of defects that went along with it, including, seizures and, kind of epileptic attacks, that kind of thing, basically to kind of continue to underline that, yes, these things are scary and yes, they're monsters, but they were human once, and that's because I think that that's a important thing. It's important to have a story when you're creating a monster. And with regards to Fallout, it's constantly this interplay between humor and horror, and humor at nuclear devastation, and then a horrific acknowledgement of what nuclear devastation actually would entail. And that to me was what sets Fallout apart so much, is that it's always both. It's always both. It's always funny. It's always very dark. And so I wanted to go for both.
That's incredible.
Yeah, this is stuff I haven't, heard about at all on the wikis or Reddit or anything. I love it.
My pleasure. Yeah, I mean, listen, I could sit down and talk about every single creature. A creature takes anywhere from 3 weeks to 5 weeks or whatever, and it's just me and that creature together, slowly being built. So I definitely tend to think about every little part. So, do you guys have a favorite creatures? I don't know if I made, who knows if I made them, but
the classic Death Claws, it's just amazing. Again, Kara said, the first time she saw a Death Claw, Fallout 4 was also really my first Fallout game too. And you stumble out and that first Death Claw just looks like, a demonized T-Rex falling out of the ground at you. You know what I mean? It's incredible.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I know you do a lot of the armor design in Skyrim and stuff. Did you do any of the armor in Fallout as well?
I did the winterized, what is it? T81B or
oh, nice.
Can't remember what was it called. Can't remember the letters. I can never remember them.
Some power armor.
Yeah, the power armor that you saw in Project Anchorage, and that was a redesign of the classic, the Fallout 1 power armor. So
Wonderful.
Istvan Pelly, who was the art director for Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, he created all the power armors. He's awesome. And so the Fallout 3 power armor is very similar to the original power armor, but it's different. And essentially this was me trying to recreate the original Fallout, the original T18B or however you say it, armor. And that was fun, but it was very hard. I'm actually good at hard surface robotic modeling. So I'm happy I did it. It came out better than I thought, but it wasn't the best. Although, actually, you know what? I forgot. The Chinese stealth armor that also was in Project Anchorage in Fallout 3, I made that as well, based on the concept art by Adam Adamowicz. So, yeah.
Great. One thing you were mentioning about character creation, you have this docket of bad guys, right? Like more people have cussed in your name by creations that you've given us by being killed by probably anyone, but I was just thinking here, if you could take one of your bad guys and make them the protagonist of their own story in a game, what Who would that be, and what would their story be like? What would that video game look like?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Interesting. Well, that's hard because I guess I'd be tempted to go more the Skyrim direction, because there's less horror in that world, and I think there's less like I guess, I mean, I think everyone loves Parthenax, the dragon. So I think he's got a great. Maybe if you saw like a spin-off novella of him as a young dragon would be fun. Awesome. That would be cool. I would, when I originally, again, for people who follow my Twitter, you probably saw this, but I designed the Fallout 4 super mutants originally with not as thuggish faces. So, and a lot of that came through because of the artwork of Adam in creating those kind of large, long-bodied men with small faces and kind of soft features, to kind of like pair that large, hulking exterior with an almost baby-like aesthetic. That really inspired me to bring out as much humanity in them as I could. So I originally designed their faces to be much more normal and human, not quite. They're kind of narrowed now. They kind of look mean. They have a permanent scowl, and a lot of that, was because when Todd liked my more human-esque version, but he was kind of like, he was pretty set on, we need to make sure that we're touching the original subject matter, and in the original, super mutants are big and lumpy and dumb and thuggish, and that's what we should do. These are always questions of bandwidth. So you can agree with that or you can not agree with that, but there's no doubt about the fact that, with when you do working game creation, you have to pick and choose very carefully what paths to take, because anything you endeavor upon is going to take a certain amount of time, and something like friendly race of Deathclaws could be, or of super mutants could add a lot of hours over the course of a project. So originally we didn't go that direction, but I always imagined them. I always want for them to have more of a role in the main story. Super mutants. I want talking super mutants. Because the idea for me of, you're human, you are infected with the FEV virus, and now you're just infected with the desire to kill. Like, I don't know. I mean, yes and no. You probably are, because you're designed to be aggressive, but you're still capable of thought and rational thought. And I think that I would love to see a super mutant story where, because I think that's a potential for a lot of emotion, a lot of comedy, and almost an anthropological study of these green brutes of the waste.
Great. I would love to play that.
Yeah, me too.
Wonderful. Well, Jonah, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on to the Fallout feed and giving us so many great answers and being so generous with your time.
My pleasure, and thank you guys for having me on. And thanks everybody out there for listening.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back sometime if we can work that out. But for now, would you please let everyone know where they can find you on the internet and follow you on social media and all that?
I certainly can. Absolutely. So you can find me on most days on Twitter. I tweet my 3D art. I tweet my 2D painting, other awesome 3D and 2D work as well. You can find me. Oh, and that handle is Jonah Lobe, JONAHLOBE, Lobe like earlobe. On Instagram, you can find me at I am Jonah Lobe. You can find me on ArtStation. You can look up a gallery of my work there, and just Google Jonah Lobe ArtStation. I'm on DeviantArt as well. Again, you can Google Jonah Lobe DeviantArt, and my website johnahlobe.com. Also, I just started a Facebook page, so you can search for me on Facebook as well. And there's my personal account. And I probably will not friend you on that, but I have another account, and that's where I'll be posting all my art, and I would gladly have you guys follow me or find me there. So yeah, come find me, and I will do my best to entertain you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. Kara, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure as always.
Thank you, Kara.
And Ray, thanks a lot, buddy.
You bet. Thanks, Andrew. And thank you, Jonah.
Oh, thanks, Ray.
Thanks again, Jonah, for joining us. And we'll see you guys in the wasteland.
See you soon. Bye. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the Fallout Feed Roundtable. If you are interested in doing a play-along character with us, the show can be contacted by emailing falloutroundtable@gmail.com. For the roundtable schedule, our Amazon link, and all other show information, please head on over to asapodcasting.com, where you will find the Fallout Feed, a Skyrim Podcast, our YouTube channel, the Chatterbox, as well as other content. Once again, thank you for downloading, and we'll see you in the wasteland.